episode 8 of the Young Adult's Guide to Planet Earth, the podcast where we try to figure out life through good conversation. I'm your host, Clayton Hamrick, and joining me as always is Sid.
Hello.
Hey, man.
How's it going?
Good.
I'm feeling good.
And we have Hunter.
Yes, it's me. Hello.
Today...
Our intros are always awkward. So
That's how it should be.
Yep.
Today we're going to be talking about... We have no idea. Because we're going to be rolling a 20-sided dice to choose between a list of 20 topics. So, I don't know, this should be interesting. We have no idea what's going on.
Should we read off some of the things, just give them an idea of what could be coming up?
No, that would ruin the surprise, man.
Okay.
Just
You heard it.
Roll. Be surprised with us.
Alright, so we got 20 options here. We're going to roll. 13.
Ooh, my lucky
That's
number.
one less than last time.
Yeah. Alright, so the topic is, what are our thoughts on growing up?
What are our thoughts on growing... Okay, before we get into the main topic, we have to, as always, share the quote of the week. So the quote of the week this week, I'm going to give the quote of the week. It's one of my favorite authors, maybe my favorite. That's debatable. It is impossible to live without failing at something, unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you have failed by default. J.K. Rowling.
Nice.
Ooh, I like it.
She is who made me love reading.
And you grew up reading her books.
Yeah, and she's a very smart and intelligent woman.
I was trying to segue into the topic, but...
You guys don't want to talk about J.K. Rowling for a minute?
Okay,
we can talk about Harry Potter. I have more
What
opinions
other
on that.
books has she made besides Harry Potter?
The only one I have is A Casual Vacancy, which is like an adult mystery novel. And then she's done stuff after Harry Potter, like A Cursed Child, and she continues to write stuff on Pottermore and stuff like that. And then I guess she helps with the screenplays of the new Fantastic Beasts movies. But other than like that universe, I don't know. She hasn't written that much, I don't think. But her story's so interesting, like, or not. It's not interesting. It's like a lot of authors is like she wrote those books and like struggled for so long to find a publisher. Like she went through, I don't know how many publishers.
Well, she was homeless before.
Yeah, and she was homeless and all that stuff. And then, but like, think about like how many publishers turned her down, and then they're like, oh dang, man, this is like the most best-selling.
They missed out on $1 billion check, probably.
Yeah, crazy amount of money. That's what I always thought was interesting about. It's not like necessarily her story, like by itself, but like all those publishing companies that lost out.
Well,
so
that's a part of growing up, you know. You just go through life trying to get the best for yourself, and then eventually it works.
Yeah. But I was gonna say like I was watching Ellen DeGeneres. I watched her Netflix special a couple weeks ago, and she talked about the first time she was on Jimmy Carson, which was the first time she did stand up, and she was 26 or 27 before she like anybody knew her name, which is like, you know, nowadays everybody tries to make something of themselves when they're 22, 23, but like some of these big... Julia Childs, is that the chef?
Mm-hmm.
She didn't like get into cooking till she was like 40.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy.
I have an even better example. Jesus didn't start his ministry until he was 30.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Like, because I said that to Erica, because me and her, we beat ourselves up for not like already having succeeded, and we're like 22, you know, and that's stupid, but like that's how society makes us feel. But then you look at these examples. Like, I was just reading the Bible and I saw that, or it mentioned that when he started his ministry, he was 30. I was like this is Jesus. Yeah. Like the most important figure ever.
But that's slightly different, because like one, that was what he was like destined, like that's what he was gonna do. He knew.
But you're digging too deep. This is just like on face value, it's a nice little comparison.
And on face value, every other person that's important in the Bible also started along their journeys.
Yeah, like all the fishermen
the same age.
Were definitely older dudes who.
Yeah.
Well, look at the great kings, like, and also look at the side stories you hear, like Samson? Yeah, like Samson. He was what, 30,
Yeah.
Well, that little story, and then the big stories of Moses. He was a lot older. He was like,
It was like hundreds of years
yeah,
while he was doing his
and
stuff.
he started off like it didn't start with him being 20. It started with him being like,
Yeah. Well, that's what our culture makes us think, because, I mean, look at the people right now that are praised, like the Facebook guy,
yeah,
Mark Zuckerberg.
or Ninja.
Yeah, I mean,
Ninja. What does that have to do
but
with
these guys
anything?
are
It's pretty
anomalies,
rich.
honestly.
He got good when he was our age.
Yeah,
But see, that's
He was
not
a
realistic
professional
for
Halo
us.
player.
no, it's not.
I mean,
I just want to point out how perfectly we segued into our main topic
We did.
of growing up.
Yeah.
So, quick question to start this off. What did you guys want to be when you were little?
I wanted to be everything. I wanted to be an astronaut, and I got older. I wanted to be something like a lawman, like
A lawman?
like a
Like
U.S.
a rogue
marshal,
sheriff?
or no, like a marshal that hunts down fugitives, and then I wanted to be a lawyer. And then
You ever seen Trailer Park Boys?
yeah,
I feel like you'd be that guy.
whatever.
The retired or the cop that got fired and he's just now a security guy at the trailer park.
Terrible.
Or Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Nope, definitely not. I never wanted to be a cop, but I always wanted to be a U.S. Marshal. And then
That's cool.
and then eventually segued to owning my own business, to like having.
Yeah.
I had two main phases. My first was an archaeologist,
Mm-hmm.
because
Ooh,
That's
that's
awesome,
another one. I
dude.
had.
Indiana Jones.
That's
Yes.
cool.
But see, then I kind of grew up and realized archaeology isn't that interesting.
Yeah.
You're not
Or
like,
lucrative.
Well,
Or
that's the
lucrative,
thing. You don't find out these things until you research them or actually go do them. For like me going to Israel and doing archaeology was cool and stuff, and I kind of like want to go do it again, but I couldn't see myself doing that for years. Like
yeah.
the intense heat,
Well,
digging in the sand and dirt all day. Just
and then you're mostly doing studying in libraries and stuff like
and
it's.
it's all about history, really.
For-
You just
Yeah.
study history. It's nothing like
Yeah.
Indiana Jones unless you by chance get in a sucky situation and all of a sudden you get kidnapped and it turns into you trying to survive. And
Yeah, in order to be Indiana Jones, you got to go through some crap.
And then I wanted to be an actor, but it's funny because as I've grown up, like that's the opposite of my personality.
Yeah.
Like even if somebody handed fame to me
Yeah.
as an actor, I'd be like, no thanks. Like I'd rather just lay low.
Yeah.
Maybe if like I could have a role that made me like tons of money, but nobody knew who I was because I was just like that side character, and then I could just retire. Like, but see, I don't like the limelight. I don't like. I'm just not. I don't like that. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting you say that because that's also something we jumped into when we were young, when we were growing up. We jumped in, like you said, you wanted to be an actor. Well, we actually delved into something like that. Like we made a movie, or
Yeah.
and you were acting in it, you directed it, and you pretty much wrote it, and we kind of delved into that, and
See, I don't regret that because that was so much fun.
yeah, and so I think it's important to like people that are growing up and they have these ambitions to be something, that they should like
Pursue it. See how it works.
pursue it when they're young, because if they don't like it, then they still have a whole life to live.
Yeah, I think our education system doesn't necessarily lend itself to that. Like, I remember in 5th grade taking some kind of like personality quiz or job quiz that landed me on architecture, and from the time I was in 5th grade until I was like in 9th grade, I thought I wanted to be an architect, and it turns out I really, really don't want to be an architect.
Yeah.
I'd say the first thing I remember, really the only thing before wanting to be an architect that I can remember wanting to be is an artist, because I would always doodle and kind of write my own comic books and stuff like that, and draw the pictures for that. And then I would go to art camp every summer, and I thought I was really good, and like I think I was good, but like I thought I was incredible.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I really like the biggest thing I remember is wanting to be an architect, because we took that test in 5th grade. I was really good at math, and then my mom is a guidance counselor. She was my guidance counselor in 5th grade, and she's the one who administered that test to my class. And like I always felt from that point on pressured to do something with math or science, like architecture, engineering, or something like that. So I never really remember having these like crazy dreams until I got to college, and I was like, screw all this, I'm gonna do the dumbest thing ever and like be a filmmaker and English major or something.
Mm.
No, that's not dumb. Don't. I'm sorry if you're a filmmaker and English major. It's not dumb. It's just it's a more difficult pathway, I think.
To money, but to happiness, it
No,
might
yeah,
be a
yeah,
quicker pathway.
Well,
Yeah.
I feel like that's what was drilled into me. Even for like, it's crazy to say now, but even from fifth grade, what was drilled into me is like, will this career make you money? Because
Yeah.
I think that's something in fifth grade that drew me to it. Like, we had this little booklet we looked up, and I looked up my code or whatever I got, and it said architecture, and then I looked beside it, and it was like average salary $65,000 or something, and I was like, holy cow! Back then, that was like $1 million to me because I was
Yeah.
in fifth grade. I mean, now that's still really good money, but it's crazy how early we kind of teach our kids to think about money and not necessarily about happiness.
It's true.
Okay.
I mean, there is a reason the colleges offer programs that aren't lucrative, and there's a reason
Yeah.
people enroll in those, because otherwise everybody would go enroll in like what, finance, accounting,
Yeah.
engineering.
Yeah, see, I didn't start to have the appreciation for humanities and art and English and all that stuff until I got a little older. And at that point, I was like, I really wished that I would have explored that more in high school, middle school, and high school.
Yeah.
And then maybe I wouldn't have tried to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just a weird thing.
I
But
think it would be important if schools started implementing that a lot more.
yeah.
Because in college, you have those classes. You have. I remember taking as my what do you call those classes that aren't towards your major, electives?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
So I remember taking those electives, and it was like, I took a NASCAR class, I took a diving class, I took archaeology, I took Christianity and studying that, and I took what was the other one? Sociology and geography and all these things, and art was one of them too. And that's when I started appreciating art more, and I kind of have my favorite paintings on a list. Like it's just you start having these things in college, and you wish that you had them in high school and middle school. Because could you imagine if like in high school and middle school they had also these classes as well, not just like in our high school we had masonry and metals and electronics,
Yeah.
but that was about it.
And those are more practical too.
Yeah.
They're not so much.
And it makes sense they would add that, because that would be like, those are really important jobs for people that like want to like do that.
Yeah.
They can
And-
make a lot of money
and
doing
in our
that, too.
area too. That's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it's really relevant.
Well,
But-
something that kind of blows my mind. I don't say it. That's an overstatement. But like bigger high schools, like we were a 3A school, but like 5A, 6A schools, like they have in Texas, or even some smaller high schools in like more urban areas like New York, they'll have these like cool programs because either they have a larger student body that they can fill out a bunch of random classes, or they have focused stuff. Like in New York, I'm sure there are some high schools that have like acting. I mean, we have drama at our schools and everything, but it's not, I don't think, as in depth as it could go. So that like, it almost made me mad when I started to realize that when I was in high school and after high school, that some high schoolers got to experience these cooler elective classes when they were in high school.
Yeah, and I feel like those are very important in figuring out who you are as a person and what you would like to do. And like I said, I feel like a lot of people that come from the backgrounds we do didn't really figure out that stuff until we got to college. And it just sucks that we can't have them in middle school and high school.
I will say that, like, I don't want to crap on what we had, because I feel like our school, barring some of the way they handled some of our adventures, which I still am salty about that. I think they handled it horribly, even as an adult. But I think they did a good job. I mean, it's a public school. It's provided. It's free. That being said, I don't want to crap on it, because I think too what is valuable in a school is the teachers. And having a passionate teacher, to me, is more important than having like all these elective classes.
Yeah.
And you can't really, like, you can pay teachers more and make them happier and more complacent. But when it comes down to it, like, my education is highlighted by the special teachers I had.
Yeah.
Not what my education consisted of.
Yeah.
Because I was exposed to enough things through the internet, my family, TV. You know, I knew what was out there. I knew what interested me, and I could pursue that, especially with the internet today.
Well, I think that's the thing, that the internet was developing while we were in high school and while we were developing, and I didn't start to branch out and learn all these things until 11th, 12th grade. I feel like nowadays kids are starting to see that when they're in middle school. Think about when we were in middle school, the internet, yeah, it existed, but like it was not on the level that it is today, and it was not as easy to access. It wasn't as easy to access information. But yeah, then I got to 11th, 12th grade. That's when I started really getting into filmmaking and thought I wanted to be a filmmaker, and that came from the internet. Because I was really into movies, really into film, so I went out and searched for it and tried to learn that type of stuff. But I feel like that's happening at an earlier age now, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I think the point like I'm trying to kind of steer to is that I'm talking like when I think growing up, I think of younger kids, but I still consider us as growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But like what I'm about to say is more towards middle school, even high school, and then younger. And that's just like every contact as an adult that you have with these kids means something. And if those kids have contact with a teacher that's just like, they gave me a textbook, I get a paycheck, I go home, that's it. There's nothing there. And in a way, you're like actually hurting the kids. But then those teachers that are passionate and they care for each student. In fact, I had a teacher that liked our grade so much. She like followed us to 3 grades. And I don't know if that was just coincidence, but I don't think it was.
No,
but that's what like a teacher is, and that's why like I actually have a desire to be a teacher.
Yeah.
Like down the road, that's why I'm getting my master's degree, because I have a family. I'm in a family business, so I don't actually need that, but I want to be able to teach because I want to be that teacher that impacted me.
Yep.
Because even if the teacher doesn't introduce me to filmmaking, which is my passion in life, they're introducing me to what passion is, and showing me that this person's passionate about me. Yep. And it's just introducing me to this like deeper connection to something, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like it's really important to have that aspect in life, like especially like I like to think of it as a mentor and mentoree kind of thing. Like the whole idea of the teacher and the student, or the master and the apprentice, like it's through every, like we do a lot of watching movies a lot, and like our favorite movies are the feudal movies where we have swords and like fighting, and like you'll have, I don't know, like knights and stuff like that, and everything that's really big in those movies is like master and apprentice, and someone teaching someone else, and somebody stepping up and learning from that teaching and becoming better. And like look at Star Wars, you have Yoda and you have Luke learning from Yoda, and then Luke becomes the master in the next series of movies. And before Yoda, it was Obi-Wan and Anakin was the student to Obi-Wan. And it's just important to have those aspects. And I definitely get what you're saying. Like it's so important to have like those teachers that stick with you through high school, because you go back to their classrooms, and like I had plenty of teachers like that in high school. I'm so great. I still talk to them sometimes when I see them. And it's so great to have that, because in college, like you see that you don't have that a lot as you did in high school, and it's kind of hard to go through college without certain teachers like that watching out for your back and helping you along the way and stuff. And like I only really had like one teacher that was like that, and he wasn't even in my wasn't like in my major that was doing that. And the one that was my very last teacher, and she was really hard on everybody, but at the end she like congratulated us and hugged every one of us and was there at the graduation and making sure we were all happy and excited to be graduated. And it's just so important to have that aspect. And if you're a student in high school or college, like look for that mentor, because it's really important to have a mentor. And even after college, look for that mentor that can help you along the way in your career. And that's super important for those that want to become successful, because successful people are always the ones telling other people, like, that are like, I feel like successful people want to help other people be successful, and those successful people had somebody that helped them become successful. And it's one of the most important things to have in life.
Well, you don't have to be a teacher either. Like, just you as a person saying something kind to somebody can change everything for them. Yeah. I mean, honestly. And you going out of your way to do something, like, just think about somebody in your life that's younger. Think about reaching out to them, because they're trying to, they have like little younger people like are always reaching out because they need that.
Yeah, they're always looking up to somebody. Like
as adults, we build a shell and we know who we are, but as kids, they don't, and they're trying to figure it out. And so they're always like reaching out. And if you're there as this snobby adult that's just too focused on their life, that's what you are to them. But if you're kind and give them attention and encourage them to follow their ideas, because kids have the best ideas, they have the best imagination. Like, encourage them, because they don't get that as often as you think they are.
Yeah.
And
especially, like, I know there are a lot of children or even people in high school that they don't have a great home life, and a lot of times the people they interact with at school is who's setting that example and who is that mentor for them.
Yeah.
And I think the problem with this nowadays is kind of the stigma that comes with being a teacher. I know a lot of people it started earlier than this, but especially starting with our grade and our age, didn't want to become teachers because there was hardly any benefit to it.
Yeah.
Unless you have that passion to be a mentor and to teach, the money is the biggest thing I think keeping people back from teaching. I know I've talked to a lot of people who are interested enough in a subject to become teachers, but they never even thought about it because there wasn't enough money in it.
Yeah.
And I've always said, it might be an extreme case, but like, why do we pay doctors and lawyers and all? Why do we not pay teachers? Teachers are the ones who teach the doctors and teach the lawyers, and I really think the teachers deserve a lot more pay
and a lot
because
more
of how
respect.
they shape our society. They shape everything that we become, and depending on, like, school in general shapes who we like. When we have a huge push towards science and math stuff, STEM stuff, which we've tried to have over the past decade or so because we're getting outpaced over in Asia, so that changes our culture. I see now kids getting really into robotics and programming and all these computer science things because we push it in schools, and that just goes to show how important our education system is to how our society is.
Yeah.
And if we're not willing to figure out a way to pay teachers more, eventually all those really good mentors, those really good examples that are teachers, are going to kind of fizzle out, and we're just going to have those people in there who they're there to get paid and they don't really care about their students.
Yeah. And the good teachers are the quality ones, which means they're probably capable enough to go get a high priced job. But that's not the point.
We had a teacher in I think middle school who, I don't know, anyway, she was qualified enough to be a superintendent. Like that, there was teachers a lot in our system who didn't have to be there, and they could have tried to do administrative stuff, blah blah blah, but they didn't because they love to teach. And I totally get that. Like, I'm the same as you. I would love to teach someday. And before I decided to make the transition into IT and into programming, I was going to school to become an English major, to be an English teacher, because some of the biggest impacts on my life were some English and history teachers I had, and I wanted to do the same for kids, 10 years down the road.
Yeah. I'd be curious to see, like, if there was a social experiment where, and this may have happened, but they take one control group where it's just like public school, and then they take one and they just pump, like, they pay the teachers 3 times, maybe 2 or 3 times, or maybe like an average of what like a congressman gets paid or something. Like, what they're just as important, and just see how the students are different. And like, that would be a really long experiment, obviously. But
well, see, you don't need to pay them too much, and here's it's a weird balance, because then they start doing it for the money, and they stop doing it for the kids. Because, like, if being a teacher paid $100,000 a year, we'd have random people like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be a teacher.
Yeah, that's true.
But they're not passionate about teaching. So, like, that's an argument for it not being too high. But, like, you got to find that balance to where we get teachers that are passionate about it. They can also feel like they can sustain a healthy lifestyle and the lifestyle they want on a teacher's salary.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, there is a system in place where, it is not really it's like a vague system, but I feel like teachers, they start, like, is it possible that a teacher would start off in, like, middle school and they work their way up to high school and they get paid more? Or are they all played the same? Or, like,
I think it really depends on what age you want to teach. So if you
how
want to be a middle school educator, and a lot of it has to do with, like, can you find a job? Because some people, they're like their whole lives, I want to teach high school, but then they go to find a job and there's just not any positions open, so they have to teach middle school.
Well, what about college teachers? Like that's the
Yeah,
one
they
big
they
thing.
definitely get paid more, but
Well, they definitely
there's
get
a lot
paid,
more
but
investment.
how does that like work though? Like when you have a college professor who gets tenure and then all of a sudden he gets paid way more, does that make him a better teacher?
Not necessarily.
Exactly, but usually the better teachers are the ones that get paid more, from
Well,
my experience.
I will say professors that tend to get tenured are probably good teachers who are good mentors, because in order to stay at one college for long enough to get tenure, they probably have to show some of. I mean, I would assume that they're good teachers, but
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's definitely that aspect, but like
So then-
it's not pushed more.
you also got to bring into consideration the fact that we have moved slowly and surely towards this world of standardized testing, where teachers aren't allowed to teach outside of the core curriculum because, or they're allowed to, but they can't because their whole evaluation at the end of every school year is based on their test grades. You know, did your students score good on the standardized test that some Joe Schmoes in the legislature made? I mean, they're educators, but they're not in the classroom every day. They made these tests, and then you got to teach your kids the test.
Yeah.
And that's really had a big effect on our school system. I know that it's been a thing the whole time we were in school. I mean, but I knew it grew while we were in school. It became a lot more of a big deal as we were going through school. So
Yeah, and that whole standardized testing thing is just, I find it ridiculous because you also have things where teachers just like give students like, oh crap, I better, like teachers that are kind of doing a crappy job, at teaching.
Yeah.
You find it they're the ones that like bump the grades up more, or
Yeah.
they'll add 10 points to the end of their grades if they do something in class like a special project or something. And I see that a lot.
We
in
had a
college,
teacher, Larry Gardner, who he's one of these that I would consider like really passionate about what he does, and he was an incredible mentor, an incredible guy. And he always talked about how it's not about the grade. It's not about the grade. All I want you to do is learn the material. I want you to kind of gain experience from what I'm teaching you. And as much as he preached that, he also had to realize, but I'm also having, because like when I had him, it was an AP class, and I loved him because he would do lectures, and it was more college style, and it was not about the grade. If you made a bad grade on one of his quizzes, there was something he would do for you. You could do some makeup work, you could do some extra credit, whatever, because to him it wasn't about the grade, it was about the learning. But ultimately, we had to pass the AP test, or else he was going to get a bad evaluation at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's I feel like that's so unfair too, because he was a really great teacher.
Yeah.
And mentor. Like I feel like he was a mentor as well.
Yeah, I mean, he would keep kids after class and talk one-on-one with them because he actually cared about them, and the people like that. And I'm impressed by what he did because he was still able to do that at the same time as having to teach the test. But some teachers just like, they get so stressed out that they have to teach the test that they can't be who they want to be in the classroom.
Yeah.
Which really, it kind of defeats the purpose for me.
Yeah.
I'm sure
It's like a crippling.
any normal person would just get burnt out. Like even somebody that was the most passionate person, 10 years of that, I mean, you're eventually just gonna like get tired and get to the point where you're just saying,
Yeah.
this is what you need to know.
And look at it, like every what is it? Every semester they have different students.
Yeah.
So you got 2 different semesters with, you got 30 kids average class, right? Maybe 20.
Yeah, and then they
for
teach
ours.
4 blocks per.
Yeah.
I mean, they see hundreds of kids a
Hundreds
year.
of kids a year, and every year it's 100 more kids. And
Yeah.
10 years later, that's what? Do the math. That's like 1,000 kids. Like it is numbers to them after 10
Yeah.
years. Like, but it's up to them to make it not numbers. It's
Well,
up to them to make
the thing is,
more.
like, you realize this: the more you serve and the more you pour into other people, the more you get out of it. I mean, if like when I was a Young Life leader, just being able to pour into these high schoolers and do Bible studies with them and kind of talk to them about stuff they were going through, I got so much out of that as their mentor. So these teachers who pour into their students and who are mentors, I feel like have a lot more longevity because they're not going to get burned out of it. Every semester, every year, they've got these new kids that they're really like pushing for. They're really trying to be there for them. But if you have these teachers who they're not able to do that, they're having to teach to the test, they're going to get burned out.
Yeah.
I think that's why there are some good teachers, because they know that those words that they say to a kid can literally change their life.
Yeah.
And that's why I have a strong desire, because number one, I've been through school like every other person, and I've seen that there are some kids that like have so many challenges in their life. And there are some kids that have so much potential and then they throw it all away. And there are so many special cases and like different types of people that just need that lending hand.
Yeah.
Whether they're under the standard or over the standard, everybody needs that positive influence. And I'm gonna say it like a godly influence, even though that's not permitted in a school. You can show Christ without saying,
Definitely.
read this chapter in the Bible by next Thursday. You know,
well, look at it. That's where it started. That's where the whole mentory thing started. Christ was
Jesus and the disciples.
Yeah, and it's the high. I would say it's the high standard of what you could be as a mentor and be a mentoree, and like that's where you should look if you want to be a better mentor. And if you need an example of that, there you go. And
we have an example of a girl that went to school with us. She was either 1 or 2 years older than us. She was actually homeless, and she was such an intelligent girl, but I mean, literally didn't have a place to go home and lay her head at night. And some of the janitors at our school kind of took her in and mentored her and gave her a place to sleep and gave her food to eat. And she actually went to Harvard.
Yeah, look at that.
She was so smart. But if she would have had those people who cared about her and wanted to pour into her, there's no way she would have went to Harvard.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I know we squander kids like that every day in the system as we have it set up right now. My mom, like I said, she used to be a guidance counselor. Now she works more at the county office and things. But there was one time I was having to help her film. She was teaching at the alternative school where the behavioral, they go when they have bad behavior, whatever. But there's these kids in there, and they're all acting up, and they're not paying attention to what my mom's saying. But based on some of their like witty responses and like them clowning around, you can tell they're intelligent kids.
Yeah.
And if somebody would just pour into them and really just hold their hand as they go. I mean, some people can't get. We were put on this earth to live in community and to be aided by our fellow man. And there's a lot of kids that need that don't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's always important. Like I said before, it goes back to the Bible and stuff. Like, you water the seed and it will grow. Like,
yeah.
And the more you water something, the more you pour into it, the more you get back, and the more you see that thing grows, and it just blossoms into a beautiful tree.
Yeah.
And
to think that we could be responsible for that, like, of course, I don't want to give myself any credit. I think God works through me, but to think that the actions that I make could change somebody's life, and it doesn't take anything. It's not like I have to lay my life down. It's just me being kind, and just taking a little extra effort for somebody. Like sending somebody that extra text. You're thinking about somebody, do that. Give them a call. Like, in the course of your day, it might take 2% of your day. Like, is that worth it for you? Like, even if you had to take 2% of your day every day from one person, would you do it? I would.
Yeah. So with that said, let's transition. I wrote this down a little bit ago, and we kind of came to a point to transition into it perfectly. I have written down who are our heroes now versus who are our heroes when we grew up. So did we personally have any of these people who mentored us and throughout us growing up? I know for me personally, a big one that I always used to say was my dad. Every time anybody would ask me who my personal hero is, I would always say my dad, enthusiastically and without hesitation, because just by his example, I want to live by his example, and I want to become someone like him. He's a very intelligent guy, has his doctorate. I've always looked up to what he's accomplished in life, and I would always say that he was my hero.
Yeah.
Do you guys have anybody that...
I would say my dad too, and my mom. Both my mom and my dad have been heroes for me, because my mom has worked. She went from, I don't know if y'all know this, but my mom used to live in a shack house, and she had to go use the bathroom and outside and do. She lived really poorly when she was growing up, and she decided she didn't want to do that anymore, and she put all her effort into learning and studying for herself, and made goals, and said, I'm gonna do this, and she got her license and she started cutting hair, and she turned that cutting hair skill into a full grown business, and now she's just been going strong for 30, 40 years, and she's made so many friends, and she's mentored other people. She's mentored other people that's went out and made their own businesses, and they come back to her, and they're just like thankful for that. And my mom always like talks to them, and she's always real good friends with them. And then my dad, he's worked and worked and worked for us, for my family, for a long time, and most of the time he's a really hard worker, and he's shown me to like push through every bad circumstance you can, because at the end, like, it's for the ones you love, and like they both taught me different lessons, and I just wanted to share that.
Yeah. I mean, I would say my parents as well. And I think that we all come from really good families. So, there's some people that don't have that.
Yeah.
And, that's something to consider, because you might have to be that person for somebody. And,
Well, yeah.
and to be honest, I can't think of anybody outside of my family that's really had a strong influence on me. And in a way, like, other than teachers, but that was just within the classroom setting,
Well, I have an example. I'm the same way. I come from I'm a pretty privileged position where my parents were there for me and were mentors to me. But we participated in Young Life, and CT Chris Turner was a huge mentor in my life. When there were things, I mean, sometimes you don't want to go to your dad to ask him awkward questions, or sometimes it's just weird, and sometimes you need a mentor that's more on your level, I guess. So CT was always that for me. And then I got the opportunity when I was in college, when I was at NC State, to be a Young Life leader there, and I was able to kind of be that for young dudes, high schoolers in Raleigh, and it was such a rewarding experience to me to be able to take what I'd learned. And I mean, it was weird because like they're like these 18-year-old dudes, seniors in high school, and I'm a 19-year-old just got to college. I don't have that much more experience than them, but like just being there for them and being someone to talk to, I think really had an impact on their lives.
Yeah.
Because just having that older guy, especially an older guy who's rooted in Christ and is always, he's there for you. He's not doesn't have any selfish intentions or anything. That's really important to a lot of people. But yeah, like you say, like we don't necessarily have the perspective of not having great parents to be there for us. I know there's so many kids who struggle with not having good home lives and good mentors and good parents in their home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they need people like us to step up and be that person, to go out of our way. And my dad, he kind of took this guy in. He used to do a lot of like fixing and flipping of homes and stuff. So he would actually pay him just to, do kind of odd jobs, clean up trash, even like do some drywall and demolition, that kind of thing. But he had a big influence on his life, and I kind of feel like that's where my compassion and desire to like be a help to somebody came from, because I see that guy's life probably wouldn't be the same right now. He would actually probably be dead, to be honest. I mean, my dad showed him he was the Christ in his life. Of course, it wasn't my dad, it was Jesus through him, but like Jesus can't be here on earth with us, so we have to be that example. We have to be that person, because this world's pretty evil. I mean, if you live in it long enough, you'll see enough pain, and if there's not people that are intentional about being a light, helping somebody in their journey, then it's just going to get darker and darker. But we can make it lighter in our circles, and that's why the Bible says to be the light.
Yeah.
And I just feel strongly about that, because I mean, I think when we're talking not so much about this topic, but about the topic of the meaning of life, we're gonna getting close to that. And growing up, I mean, that's life. We're always growing up, so I guess that does tie back in.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess you got, and anybody's listening can tell I'm pretty passionate about this. I think we all are. I mean,
yeah, we kind of dove right into the heat of the topic, man.
Yeah.
Like we just dove into it.
Well, we're growing up. We've been growing up. We're constantly growing up.
Yeah.
If there's anything we know a lot about.
Well, this harkens back to, like I said on our last podcast about New Year's resolutions, is to always be learning. And the whole process of growing up is learning. I know, and that's the thing. In high school or whenever you were in school or whenever you were a kid, you could sit down at the end of every day and say you learned something new because the world was just so expansive. There was just so much you didn't know. When you're 3 years old, and the world is so small to you that there's so much to learn. So the older you get, the harder it is to actually sit down at the end of every day and say, "This is what I learned today." But I believe that we should seek that out, and we should always try to be learning and always try to be growing. And I know there's so many people who stop growing way too early.
Yeah.
And then they're just stagnant the rest of their lives.
Well, piggybacking off that, do you guys want to talk about like what we would say to ourselves if we were like in middle school or high school right now? I mean, like what would we have done differently? Like we're growing up, and I feel like I haven't lived my whole life yet, but I feel like in a lot of ways, the middle school and high school years can be some of the toughest.
Yeah, I would say to myself, sit down, take a deep breath, and relax, and enjoy the ride. That's what I would say, because I had so many things I would worry about, and so many things I wanted to do, and I always worry about stuff like that, and it's just like.
I think that's good advice. Just like, don't focus on succeeding immediately at everything, because that's what the world makes you think you have to be.
Yeah.
You immediately have to succeed. You have to get 100 on the first test, or it's going to screw up your grade point average. School shouldn't work like that.
Yeah.
It should scale up. And of course, the tests are easier at first, but still, it shouldn't be you get a 0 and now your grade's screwed for the rest of the semester.
Yeah.
That's why people drop out of college, because and that's so wrong. We need to learn that it's okay to fail. Like it is. Like we should fail, because that's everybody knows, has heard somebody say that failing is how you grow, and the more you fail, the more you succeed.
Yeah.
That goes back to the J.K. Rowling quote at the beginning of this episode, man. Perfect tie back.
Yeah. And also, like, I just want to shout out to the Rocky movies. And the one speech the best speech in the Rocky movies is like, yes, the world will knock you down, but it is the most important thing to pick yourself back up again and keep moving and keep going, because it'll throw so many curveballs at you and so many hits and jabs in your face and like just smack you on the ground, and you have a choice to either keep getting hit and getting put down and put down and put down, or you can get back up again and keep going.
Yeah, it's crazy to look back on life and with that knowledge and being like, why was I so dumb back then? Like, why did I think when my girlfriend broke up with me, why did I think the world was over? I was 14 years old and I had the rest of my life ahead of me. And this goes back to what we were talking before the podcast about how I listened to some podcasters who are obviously older than us, 30 years old, 40 years old, and you can just hear the wisdom and what they're saying and what they've learned through their life just through their normal conversations. And I strive to be that way. But even as 23-year-old dudes, we can look back on our 17-year-old selves and be like, I wish that I would have just known this,
Yeah.
Yeah.
A thing that I would want to tell myself is, and I consider myself a pretty creative person when I was a kid, but I would have just said, be more creative, chase your ideas, don't be so rigid on like thinking about what's conventionally successful. Don't think about money. Just have like, before you get like 21, you need to just, like you're saying, relax, be more lighthearted, and just enjoy life. And you know what? Screw that. Your entire life you need to be like that. Yeah. And if you're not lighthearted, then you're not doing the right thing. If you're stressed, of course stress is good. I mean, you want to challenge yourself, but what I'm saying is like,
don't go jump off a bridge.
You need to find things that make you light up. When I was a kid, I had ideas, I had visions, but you know what I ended up taking most of my time? Things that numbed my mind, like video games and movies. Yeah. And why is that? Why didn't I go outside?
It's because they fed our imagination. That's why. I always watched movies and played games that allowed me to be what I wanted to be in real life in a video game, and I found that so addicting because
it is addicting.
Was fulfilling my passions.
But our lives should give us that same feeling, because that is our reality. And if we get false expectations, that's why a lot of people get let down and just settle.
Yeah. I'll tell you something that I've kind of come to realize is that parenting is really hard. And especially when you're 3 years old, 4 years old, the easiest thing to do is, while mom's making dinner, to turn the TV on or put a video game in your hand And then as we grow up, as we become 10, 12 years old, that's just what we're used to. And even though our parents aren't forcing us to do that anymore because they've just got to cook dinner or do the laundry, it's just kind of been ingrained into us. So I'm not saying that any of our parents did a bad job, or anybody out here on the cast, any of their parents did a bad job, but these easy forms of entertainment have just been pushed onto us because of that.
Yeah.
I mean, way back in the 20s or whatever, you would go out back with your sister and play with a stick or something, and you would have to be imaginative because you didn't have any toys, you didn't have much to play with, and nowadays that's just not the case. It's just easier to put an iPad in your hand.
The period of my life where I grew the most was the time when I had the least distractions and I just spent time in my head.
Yeah.
Because I left high school like a year and a half early, and you guys know this, but basically we were moving, and I had almost completed all of the classes required for me to graduate, and so my parents just homeschooled me for the rest of the time. But like, it wasn't like I had to go through the rigorous tasks of each thing and take standardized testing. I didn't. Like, it was almost like I went to this school where, you know, those schools that aren't standardized testing, they're just like creative.
Yeah.
My parents had tasks for me and I had to do schoolwork every day, but at the same time they encouraged me to be creative, and they didn't let me turn the TV on until like 6 or 8, I think. And in that time of my life, I spent so much time in my own head because I didn't have a lot of friends because like I lost contact with everybody at Burns basically. And I had like one family friend that I had known my whole life that I would get together every once in a while, but like I spent so much time up here, and I feel like I matured like 10 years in that 1 to 2 year span, honestly.
I feel like that's why I've always felt as mature as I have, is because I'm a thinker and I spend a lot of time just in thought.
Yeah, it's so valuable.
Yeah. I definitely felt that when I got to college. I had way more time on my hands. I didn't have people, you know, my parents at my house with me. I was alone in my apartment, and I would, like, at first, you know, you'd have all this free time. You're like, oh, I'm gonna watch Netflix, play games. But then again, after about 3 days of that, I'm ready to like start thinking about other things and like
being creative and like what can I do. Like I started to like keep a journal and want to start a blog and all this stuff because I just needed an outlet for all of these things that were pent up inside me.
Yeah.
I would say, going back to what you were saying earlier, giving our past self advice, and I don't know if I would have went for this back in high school, but I've talked about this time and again about meditation. How
meditation.
And you're talking about being in your head and spending a lot of time in your thoughts. What meditation does for me, at least, is I become very mindful of just everything going on around me, and very mindful of all these thoughts that whiz around in my head every day, and you start to understand which thoughts to latch onto, which thoughts to push out. And so like I really think if back in the day, like even back in high school, I would have understood and started practicing meditation, that it would have really helped me at my growth. And yeah, like I say, we're gonna have a podcast on that because
we're not
dive
talking
a lot
about
deeper.
We're not talking about
You can do that if you want to,
but like we were more talking about like laying in our beds or sitting in a chair or putting
you can meditate on your drive to work or whatever.
Yeah, think about
the act of meditation is just about like becoming mindful about your thoughts and understanding your physicality. Yeah, you can sit on the floor with your legs crossed for an hour and meditate. People do that. People even hum while they're doing it. It's not. Yeah, it's this funny thing we see in movies, but it's not. It's serious. Like people do that, and it's just fine because that's how they meditate the best. But
I find a lot of hunters do that. They'll have they'll get up at the crack of dawn and they'll go and sit in their tree, and you know they might get lucky and find a deer the first 20 minutes, but most hunters stay out there for hours and hours, and they meditate. I know they do because they have nothing else to do because they have to be quiet. They have to control their breathing, and that's a part of meditation is being quiet and control your breathing and just relax and just control your thoughts. It's all about controlling your thoughts. You can't let what do I need to do when I get home?
Yeah, you can't be distracted.
Yeah.
It's all about understanding all of your thoughts. And I bet there's a lot of people who have done meditation without even realizing it. And there are a lot of times in our lives when we can meditate, just like I say, like drive to work. Most people will be listening to music or, oh, that car just went by, or what am I going to have for dinner tonight? But like if you would take that 20 minutes or however long it takes you to get there to just kind of maybe listen to some I don't know, like a film score you like or some like really calm music and just kind of like start to piece through what's going through your head. I think you find a lot of growth in that.
Yeah, and it'll go by quick. You think it will be slow and boring, but at first it might. But when you get used to it, you'll find that you don't have a lot of time to meditate anymore, because when you do meditate, time goes by fast because
Yeah.
you start thinking in your head, and time around you moves fast, and in your head you're moving slow and steady, and you're thinking about the future and how you can improve yourself. And not even that, you can think about right now, like who are you, and then you start thinking about that, and you start thinking about the things you've done, and you start realizing these things that you probably never realized before. And it's really healthy to do that, like to just sit down and think about life and what that means to you and who you are. And you'll start realizing you find yourself a lot more that way than you would watching a movie, playing games, watching Netflix every day. And like those things are cool and fun and entertaining, but it's not healthy to do that every single day, to where you're not even thinking, you're just going through life
Using it
entertaining
as a
yourself.
distraction. I
Yeah,
think that's
you're numbing yourself.
numbing. Yeah, I think that's how a lot of people use it. Even me, it's like when I'm stressed, what do I want to do? I want to just put the TV on and just drown everything out. But what would be better for me would to maybe talk to somebody about it, or maybe just sit there, just quiet myself. Because what do I need when I'm stressed? I don't need more loud flashing noises and pictures. I just need to like calm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and your brain actually, like a lot of people don't realize, but when you're watching TV and Netflix, it's working as hard as it would any other thing that you would do. And if you meditate, you're actually giving your brain a break for a change, and like
Yeah.
you're turning.
Think about how nice it would be, because I think we all, and I think most people, like it's comforting for them to watch TV and listen to music and do time wasting activities. Think of how awesome it would be is if that's how like just being peaceful was, or that's how being with God and praying, or that's how just relaxing was for you.
Yeah,
Like I think we'd be a lot better off. We'd be more calm people, we'd be more relaxed, we'd be more confident.
I think what it all boils down to, and what I've realized, is it all boils down to focus. Because you say that about like a book. Like I should be able to have as much fun reading this book, like say a fantasy book, as watching Lord of the Rings, because you're doing the same thing. You're experiencing this story, but it's so hard to focus, especially now. I mean, our attention spans are getting less and less with the earlier and earlier we're introducing kids to phones and whatnot. But that's another thing meditation does for you. If you actually practice it on a daily basis, it really improves your focus. It lets you, if you sit there. I do a 10-minute meditation every morning, and having to focus for 10 minutes is hard.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's hard for everybody, and unless you practice meditation and you learn how to focus. And so then when you train yourself up in that, it's a lot easier to be calm and a lot easier to be peaceful, and it's a lot easier to you're a better person. You start to think before you speak, and you start to be kinder to people.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it comes with focus.
yeah. Whew, that was a lot.
So real quick, we're about to end up here, but what are some things in life that you've seen the most growth in the past couple years? Because I think these past couple years for us especially have been really pivotal, and like we've changed a lot of things we didn't like about ourselves, and we've kind of started to form who we are as adults. So what are some of those things that you've grown in?
For me, I think it's just being more of a team player, because when you're a kid, I think it's really easy to just think the world revolves around me. I have this need, I'm gonna fulfill it. I'm hungry, I get food. And I've kind of had to kick that habit a little bit and just think more about other people and be more compassionate and thoughtful, because I was in circumstances where I would be hungry, so I would get grumpy and like say something unkind to my family. And that, as humans, we're bigger than these animal instincts. I shouldn't get upset because I'm hungry. That's baby crap. So like that's something I've really had to grow up and just understanding that my needs will be fulfilled. I am so blessed, and I live in, like I am a blessed person. I have my needs met, so I don't need to act like that, and I need to just be a team player and focus more on being there for other people, and just being kind regardless of what's going on. Because yeah, I think that's, and also I've just been so like so focused on making myself like optimized, getting rid of the stuff in my life that's holding me back. And I'm not talking strictly holding me back from success and wealth, but holding me back from who I want to be. And because there's things in my life that I know that won't, if I did them for the rest of my life, it wouldn't do anything good for me. In fact, it'd probably hurt me. And there's some things in my life that if I honed in on those, I'm going to become the man I want to be. So I think, I guess the word might be, like you said, focus. It's just focusing on what is important, and then being disciplined enough to stick to that and to cut out those things that my flesh loves, but like, hey, we're an adult now. Like, we don't need to be doing this stuff all the time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like entertainment. I don't need to be doing that. I don't need to be hopping on my phone and TV 24/7. I'm rambling, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Honestly, I could say the same thing. Like, I used to consider myself like a lone wolf sometimes. Like, I don't know, I always had friends, but like I would always like doing things by myself first. And then I noticed that like I had more fun when I had friends around. And that really changed the way I looked at like having friends, and like it made me more, cuz I am an introvert, but I found myself to be all like super excited and like fun, and I wanted to be that way with other people, and I wasn't that way when I was by myself. So like I kind of figured out that I was actually an extrovert as well, like, and it made me realize that like, like you can be whoever you want to be, and if you are an introvert, then try doing extroverted things, and who knows, you might find out that you're actually an extrovert. And also I just like this journey through my life is just all like I figured out who I am and like as a person, and what I like doing a lot more, and like, and especially through college I learned like what I liked and who I wanted to be, and just the journey of knowing who you are or finding out who you are as a person, like that's really been big for me. And another thing is knowledge. Like, I've learned so much in the past couple of years just because like I've wanted to learn as much as possible, and I feel like I keep learning more and more. And I found out that like I also love sharing that with people, so like that's what got me into doing this, wanted to do a podcast, because I just love sharing knowledge that I've acquired to other people, and that's helped me find out what some of my passions are as well. So yeah, that's me rambling as well. So
I'd say over the past couple of years, one of the biggest things I've grown in is thinking how certain things I say affect people. Like, I'm naturally a really sarcastic guy, and in high school, a lot of people didn't like me for it, and I would just say sarcastic things left and right. But like, I started to realize how it actually had an effect on people, and how most things I say to other people is going to have some type of effect, good or bad. So I started to try and be a lot more mindful of everything that came out of my mouth, and every action that I did towards another person started to be more intentional. And I'd say that was, for me at least, one of the biggest growth points, because I used to do things without, selfishly. I would do things to other people, and I wasn't that bad of a person, but I know for a fact. So a lot of this came from when I led Young Life in Raleigh. They straight up told us when we were in leader training, like, don't be sarcastic. Like, some people, even if people understand your sarcasm, sometimes sarcasm can come off as like really hateful. And like, I'd never really had that mindset on it. I thought it was just all in good fun. But so that really triggered in my brain. I was like, I better start thinking a lot more about what I say before I say it. And I definitely still struggle with it to this day. I mean, sometimes I say mean things and hateful things to my family and my fiance that if I would have just literally took 2 seconds before it came out of my mouth to think about it, I would have never said it.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm still growing in, but I think that's one of the most important things for me.
Cool.
Growing up's hard.
Yeah. For everybody.
Painful.
Everybody. Something else I've learned from growing up is that every single person on this planet has challenges. I
Yeah.
don't care if they're like Donald Trump's son. They have everything handed to them. In fact, that guy probably had it harder than anybody. You know,
Yeah.
everybody has challenges, and you can't look at somebody and say they've got it easy.
Yeah.
Because
definitely
first of
agree with
all,
you.
that's not good for yourself. You shouldn't be looking at people and be like, man, they had it easy. I wish I could have it like that,
Yeah.
or be jealous of them, or hateful towards them. That's not healthy. Everybody has challenges, and you need to just not focus on other people. Focus on your challenges and overcome them. Because
embrace and
Yeah.
overcome them. Like that girl that went to school with us that went to Harvard. I mean, that's part of her.
Mhm.
The struggle that she went through is part of her, and that taught her a lot in life. That gave her a lot of wisdom, and that's made her a better person.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people in her position. There are a lot of kids who are probably her classmates at Harvard who were trust fund babies who never struggled. Well, like you say, they struggle with something, but that made her who she is.
Yeah.
And now that she's overcome it, it's made her stronger. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, man.
There you go.
Yeah. Get back up. Keep going.
Well, this was a fun episode. Some of these D20 episodes are going to be more serious than others. I guess
Gosh,
we could have went
I
so
love
many.
it.
We could have went so many different ways with this one,
Yeah.
but I like doing these a lot because I think it makes us better. Like the whole point of this podcast is to become better at conversations of significance, to learn how to have conversations with people that spark discussion.
Yeah.
And these D20 episodes, these random episodes, really kind of teach us that. Is like how do we roll a dice and have a discussion about that? So I think it's really cool.
I agree.
Well, that was fun, and I guess we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah,
Wait,
thanks for listening.
You want to say some final thoughts?
You got final thoughts, man?
Yeah. I wanna say
What do
them.
you got, man?
I just want to say to people, just no matter what you go through, you just gotta get back up and keep going. Like, don't let the hard things in life knock you down, because everyone has those hard things that knock them down. And if you want to be successful, or if you just want to enjoy life, you're gonna have to learn that life is gonna it's gonna throw you curveballs, and you're gonna have to take them. You're gonna have to go through some pain in your life, but the most important thing is to get back up from that and to keep going. You're gonna have girlfriends that break up with you. You're gonna have people that go behind your back, and you're gonna have people that just you trusted in, and they break that trust. But the most important thing is to not think, well, I guess I'm not gonna have any more friends, or I'm not gonna go for any girlfriends, or I'm not gonna succeed, so I might as well not try. No, you need to have a way different mindset. You need to change that mindset and push yourself and keep trying and keep going and get back up, get on that horse and keep riding. That's what I wanted
Man,
to say.
if you catch a curveball just the right way, you'll hit it out of the park.
Exactly. What?
What?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. But yeah, that's my
That
final
was my
thoughts.
final statement. Was
Awesome.
Nice.
with that said,
All right.
Godspeed and good conversations. Thanks for listening to this episode of Young Adults Guide to Planet Earth. We hope you enjoyed the conversation.
If you want to join the conversation, make sure to join us on Twitter at Young Adult Guide and Instagram at Young Adults Guide.
And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell if you want to be notified. Like, comment, and join the conversation.
Talk to you next week.